Hello, hello, hello. Okay, great. I have received the go ahead. Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, and I will be speaking to you about my publication, Pruden Principles 10 Strategies to Propel Women to the C Suite. So, before I get started about the book, I guess I better share a little bit about myself because my journey is really what prompted the book. I am a about 2.5 decade old HR C-suite executive. I worked my way up the ranks. I have been doing human resources for about 26, 27 years. And I came up from what is called a regular generalist, which is your very entry level position, all the way up to the C-suite, which is where I am now. And I have been in senior leadership for the last 15 years. I also own a business, a coaching business, a female executive coaching business called Pruden Global Business Solutions Consulting. And Pruden Global is a business where I help female middle managers who are seeking senior leadership positions in the C-suite. And I also help entrepreneurs. And I help with leadership competencies. And those competencies are leading people, leading change, and using technology and analytics to do that. And so I work with predominantly C-suite leaders or those who want to be in the C-suite on how to lead multiple operations, multiple levels of people, and within organizations, as well as within their own company. I work with entrepreneurs who have various multiple locations. And so I work with their leadership team on how to properly lead multi-level organizations as well as multiple locations. I have been doing human resources for about 26, 27 years, and I've been doing female coaching through my business for about 7 years. And I've been doing classes. I've been speaking for about 2 decades, but my business is only six years, going on 7 years old. I teach online classes. I teach virtual online webinars. I do keynote speaking, and I also write books. I'm actually the author or co-author of 11 publications, including Pruden Principles. Pruden Principles is my baby, but I do have 10 other publications that I have been either the author or the co-author of. And I also created a community called Sister Leaders Community. And Sister Leaders Community is a community, it's a diverse, multi-generational community of women who are current, past, present, and future female leaders. And what we do within the Sister Leaders community is that we share information in order to elevate, equip, and qualify the next level female leader or the current level female leader. And so Sister Leaders is a global community. We do have some individuals from Paris and London and Germany. It's mostly virtual through our relationship, and we do have an annual conference that is in October. And so the book, Pruden Principles, was birthed out of a pain point for myself, where as I was climbing the ranks, I had some unpleasantries that happened to me. And so want to share a little bit about some of those unpleasantries, and then we'll go into how that translated into the actual book and the chapters within the book. So there was a time within my career where I was identified as a successor to my boss. And my boss was a director, executive director. And at the time I was a senior manager. And so I had been identified that my boss had planned to retire within a year and that I would be her successor. And so actually any employee would love to get that kind of news, that you have been identified for the next job within your professional career progression, because that would have been the next position for me as a senior manager, a director. And so I was excited. And so after the announcement, she began to move over some of her tasks and responsibilities to me within the next year in anticipation of her retiring. And so within the first year, she moved over quite a few tasks and responsibilities. And so I was okay with that. She explained how to do it and who the contacts were. And I was cool with that. Within the second year, and you heard what I said, right? The second year, I became a little concerned because now it is year 2 and she is not talking about retiring, but yet I had the bulk of the duties. And so it became a very unpleasant situation. But at that time in my career, I was a little bit younger and I didn't really know how to discuss it, because you can't make someone retire and you can't force someone to retire even though they have announced that they are retiring. So I was just basically unhappy at work. And so what I did while I was going through that experience, trying to figure out what my next move was going to be, because now we are in year 2, and my boss still had not retired, is I sought the help of a professional coach. I believe in having coaches for your career. And so we worked on building my own professional brand outside of the organization that I work for. And so we worked on that until we can figure out what was going on in my current position, where I was supposed to be promoted and my boss had not left. And so I put out some proposals to do some conference speaking, and I was accepted. And so that started my speaking career. And so I started speaking as a industry expert in organizational development, organizational leadership, and human resources, and all things leadership. So I started traveling the nation on my time off, speaking on those topics to create myself as a subject matter expert. And so after year 2, going to year 3, and I realized that my boss was not going to retire, then I decided to seek employment outside of that organization, recognizing that she, although she had announced that she was retiring, the company could not force her to retire. And it was time for me to move up. And so I accepted an external position after being with that company for 14 years. You heard that right. For 14 years, I accepted an external position with an external company and moved up into the director position. So that company, I had never, ever heard of that company. And so as the months went by, I found out that that company was operating and conducting themselves in some ways that I didn't agree with. But I had planned to stick it out for at least 1 year, and then I would seek employment elsewhere. That situation became so bad in terms of a moralistic environment that would really conflicted with my morals and my values, that at 7 months, I exited the company at 7 months and exited the company without a job. So can you imagine myself going home to my husband and saying, hey, I left this job because it was just an awful, awful, awful place. And I have been in a very unpleasant situation for the whole 7 months I've been there. Oh, and by the way, I don't have a job to replace it. And so that is where I was. But, God really works and uses, if we were aware of what God's plan is for us further down the road, we probably would not stick through certain situations if we knew what was further down the road. But after being unemployed for 4 months, I was given an even higher position, a position in the C-suite. And guess what? I would not have been able to qualify to get the C-suite position had I not took that awful job where I was sitting in that awful job for 7 months. And so it is my testimony that it was all part of God's plan for me to move from my level of comfort with the company that I was with for 14 years to that unknown position, even though I found it to be unbearable only for 7 months. But I needed that position on my resume in order to get the higher position, which I believe God granted me with. And I have been in that position ever since. And I'm in the C-suite. I'm a Chief Human Resource Officer for HBCU. So the book, Pruden Principles, was birthed out of my whole experience that I went through, because what I did not have is I did not have a playbook on what I should focus on at trying to move up in senior leadership. I did not have anyone to tell me step by step by step, you should focus on this, you should look at that. If you're looking to be in the C-suite, because there is a difference between management and leadership. Leadership is the long game. Management is managing things from day to day. It is for short goal situations, moving products and services, short goal. Leadership, you are looking further down the road for an organization, whether it's for yourself or whether you're working for someone else. You are looking at least 3 years down the road as part of your strategic goals. And so if you are, keep in mind, I am a female leadership coach. So but the competencies are the same for male and female. So don't get me wrong. The competencies are the same. So if you are looking to move from management to leadership, you need to be focusing on different things. I had no one to tell me that as I was going up the ranks. And so I had to do my own research. I had to find my own mentors, because there were none inside of my organization who were willing to mentor me. And so once I acquired that information, and once I got into the C-suite, then I said, this is crazy. Someone needs to document what people should be looking at if they are interested in going into leadership from management, because they are not the same, even though you won't be hard pressed to come across someone who uses the word manager and leader in an interchangeably way. But in terms of corporate leadership, the highest positions within an organization, those individuals day to day are structured to look towards the long game, the 3 to 5 year game, not the management's focus, which is day to day. And so that's where Pruden Principles, and I focused on 10 specific chapters that I found to be helpful. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one of those chapters. But the chapters in the book are: generalists get credibility, specialists get the job, How many of you have heard that you need to have a specialty or that you need to be a generalist? So I'm gonna share just a little bit about what that chapter is about. And then another chapter that no one talked about in my entire career, the title of the chapter is Network Up, Down, and After 5. How many people have told you that you need to maybe go to lunch with certain people, working lunch, maybe talk to the people who are up under you? The higher up you go, the more vulnerable you are for everyone up under you, because you're responsible for everyone up under you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that chapter, Network Up, Down, and After 5. The third chapter is communication. Now, communication is verbal, written, nonverbal. How about that? Facial expressions, tonation. So we're going to talk a little bit about communication and why it's not a good idea to email a lot to your employees if they're within the same building, on the same floor, in the same office. Why face-to-face is more beneficial as a leader. So we'll talk a little bit about communication. Another chapter has to do with it when you're moving up into the C-suite position. And a C-suite position can be a senior manager or above. It just depends on what the highest position is within your organization. So those are the C-suite positions: the highest position in marketing, the highest position in IT, the highest position in HR, highest position in operations, whatever that title is: director, senior manager, VP, assistant vice president. Those are your C-suite levels. So the next chapter is you need more than a resume. When you are moving into a senior leader position, there are a few things that need to accompany your resume, and those things are more important than your resume. And we're going to talk about what those things are, just a little bit about what those things are. I have a chapter on coaches and mentors. I am a pro coach and mentor individual. I have had 2 coaches in my life. One, I had a contract coach, a coach I can call as needed. She charged me $350 an hour, but still, she was there when I needed her. And then I've had 2 ongoing relationships with coaches. And I extremely believe that you should always touch base with, have some type of coach or mentor relationship with someone who has walked the walk of where you are trying to go. It can sure help you save money, and it can help you save time in your walk. And so I have a chapter on coaches and mentors. I have a chapter, get ready for the interview. I have a chapter that's near and dear to my heart, which we'll talk a little bit about: data-driven leadership. Leadership is more than a spreadsheet. You need to know how to articulate the value that your department brings to an organization. And the way to articulate your value in any atmosphere is through data. Data talks. If you're not one who can articulate your value, I guarantee you are one who is losing resources, losing money, possibly losing employees, and your business is not doing as well as it could be doing if you are not following the numbers, if you're not making, I call it the twin powers of analytics and business decisions. Your business decisions cannot fully be on your gut. They have to be data-based. And so I have a chapter on data-driven leadership. I have a chapter also, which we'll talk briefly, that image is more than a blazer. Your image is your reputation. What are the results that you generate? What is the product or the results that you are known to generate? When someone says your name, what do people think of? has to do with your reputation. So image is more than a blazer, has to do with not so much as those external things that we put on, but it has a lot to do with how we operate within our business and what people think of us. All of that is part of your value. All of that is part of your image. And then I have a chapter called Compensation, Negotiations, Doing Salary Offer. And then because I am a female leadership coach, I have a chapter that is strictly for the women, because men do buy my book. It's called You Are Not One of the Boys. And simply said, you can be a woman in senior leadership and carry all of the characteristics that may be a little bit more familiar with a woman and how she operates within the workplace. Just be authentic, just be yourself, and you don't have to act necessarily like your male counterparts. And so let's get right into the book. And so what I've done is I've actually put some sticky notes on everything that I wanted to make sure that I wanted to share with you within this short period of time. Believe me, it is not even touching a small portion of what is in the book, but you'll have the information to be able to purchase the book later. But I do want to share a little bit about what I know to be in the book, so that you'll know what you are getting. So in terms of specialists, well, for the chapter, generalists get credibility, specialists get the job. You do need to have a specialty in something. And particularly if you are trying to get hired by someone, usually your specialty is what that business need is, what that organization's need is. And so if you are a senior leader and the organization is having money issues, then they're going to hire someone who specializes in turning around and dealing with finance issues. So that goes back to, what are you known for? What are the results that you generate? This is where having a specialty is more beneficial, because if you are going to work for someone else, then they are looking for someone who has a specialty to address their pain points at that time. And so that is where your specialty comes in. And so, as you are going through whatever the process is in terms of selection, you're going to be put up to the top of the pile based on what that organizational pain point is and what your specialty is. If those two line up, then you're going to be put at the top of the pile. And so that is where your specialty is an advantage. A generalist advantage is, once you get hired by an organization, you need to know how everything fits together and how it operates for the overall goal. That is where your generalist knowledge is very beneficial for you, because everyone does not have to explain every little part to you, because you understand from a general standpoint how marketing factors in, how IT factors in, how HR factors in, even though your specialty may be finance. And so that's the difference between a specialist and a generalist. A specialist can dive in and diagnose, develop an action plan based on a specific situation for that specific pain point. A generalist can figure out how everything works together, but they also need to have some type of specialty in order to get hired into a situation as a senior leader. And so that is where generalists get credibility, but specialists get the job. Because generally, companies, if you're going to work for someone else, and this is not if you are an employer, not if you are an entrepreneur working for yourself, but if you're going to work for someone else, then your specialty needs to match the pain point of that organization. And so that is the chapter 1. Generalists get credibility, specialists get the job. That is the difference between the two and the value that both of those statuses have within the organization. Generalists are more valuable once you get in the inside, because you understand how all the parts work for the overall whole. Specialists, the value is when they are hiring you, because your specialty addresses the pain point that that organization is feeling at that particular time. And so chapter 1 goes in depth about specialists and generalists and where the value lies within an organization. And so that is chapter 1. So I want to chapter 2, network up, down, and after 5. So I don't know how many of you, maybe by way in the chat, have you ever heard that when you're in management, you should not be socializing with your employees? You should not be, you shouldn't get too close? Or have you ever heard anyone say, keep your personal life personal in the workplace? If you have ever heard all of that, then I am going to share with you something that may just twinkle your sensibilities in regards to that, because I disagree with that. And the research shows that that is not the way that you interact with your staff when you're in leadership. When you're in leadership, you need to have more than a surface level relationship with your employees. You should not have an employee, someone that you see, I'm talking about individuals that you see on a regular basis, because depending on where you are in leadership, there may be some employees up under you who you don't see on a regular basis and you don't know much about. But if you are interacting with someone on a regular basis, you should know if they're married. You should know if they have children. You should know if they're in school, taking a class. You should know if they play an instrument. You should know some basic things about them. Your relationship should not be high and by. And I tell you why. Because relationships at work are cultivated through just relationships in general. Meaning that your employees need to be able to relate to you, feel comfortable with you, know that you care about them. Those employees who work under leaders who take an interest in them, and I'm not saying you have to get down and dirty into their business, but if you find out that someone is going to school, you know, when you're at the water cooler with them or whatever and say, hey, I heard that you were going to school, you know, what are you taking up? Those type of conversations. There are 5 critical connections within an organization that are pivotal for every leader. And it's the acronym is CHAMP. So H, you should have a connection with customers or clients. That's C. When employees are hired as a leader, you should have, there's a critical connection with the new hires within the organization. There's also a critical connection with associates. These are individuals that are on your same level. You know, you should have more than just a basic relationship with them if you're working side by side with them every day. Mentors. Mentors are those individuals who are possibly the next level up in the corporate structure. You should have a somewhat of a relationship with those individuals, because those individuals can serve as ambassadors for you or sponsors for you in rooms that you are not part of. in meetings that you are not part of. So if they know that you're getting a certification, that you're getting a degree, that you used to work at ABC company, and they happen to be other leaders are in a room talking about ABC company, and they want to know how they can kind of get an in and find out, different things about the company, because that company is successful. And the fact that that this particular employee used to work at ABC company, then you could possibly talk up that employee to get a job that's possibly not even posted. So it is critical to have a relationship with customers and clients, hires, associates, mentors, as well as your proteges, which is the P for champs. Your proteges are those people that you are guiding their career through the organization. All 5 of those categories are critical relationships when it comes to networking within the workplace. A lot of people don't look at that as networking, but networking is what I'm calling it, because it's nothing more than exchanging information between one another about the value that you can add to a situation or a service or a product or a company. You're sharing that information, and someone can take that information and speak on your behalf when you're not in the room. Someone can take that information and recommend you for a certification or class, an award, or anything like that. Let's talk about after 5, because the title is Network Up, Down, and After 5. There are times when it is okay. I used to have someone who was just adamant about not going to lunch with employees. I'm not going to lunch with employees. That's not work related. There are a lot of decisions, particularly in leadership, and I've been in leadership for about 15 years, closer to 20 now, that are made over lunch, over dinner, over coffee. A lot of decisions. The stuff that happens at work is just the administrative part that has to be done. The decision was made at coffee at Starbucks. The decision was made at a working lunch. And so you do want to, and that's part of building relationships. There is a lot of exchange of information in those settings that aren't necessarily exchanged in work meetings. And so that's why you want to network with those who are above you, as well as those who are on your level, as well as those who work under you. And sometimes that networking and interaction is outside of the office. So do not shy away from networking up, down, and after 5. That is chapter 2. So want to move and touch a little bit on each chapter. And so I am going to move quickly to chapter number 3, which is communication. The best methodology for the most successful leaders use in terms of verbal communication is storytelling. And so learn how to tell a story. Learn how to convert data and what has happened within the business into a story so that your employees can learn the moral of the story. And what I mean by the moral of the story is why you're communicating the story. What are the takeaways from the story? What are the do's and don'ts of the story? As well as they do not feel like you are, for lack of a better word, preaching to them or lecturing to them. And so storytelling is the most effective way of sharing information using memorable stories so that the listener can relate to and remember. So keep that in mind in terms of verbal communication. For written communication, I'm just going to say this in terms of written communication. Do not send an email if the person is within walking distance from you. Don't do it. Not as a regular course of action. There are going to be some times where you need to send a quick email, but that is how you build relationships, through interacting and not through email interaction. So if someone is within the same office, the same floor, such as yourself, do not send them an email, because a lot of times emails prompt are back and forth. I call it email volleyball, when all you could have done was just walk in and say, hey, you got a few minutes, and you could have addressed the questions that they had or have, and you can have that back and forth that you can have when you have a verbal conversation that is difficult with emails, because you got to wait until someone replies and different things like that. So make sure that you utilize verbal communication when people are within a close proximity of you. To communicate like a C-suite executive, I'll give you these 3 main areas to focus on. Use simple, straightforward language and minimize jargon. Be mindful of the tone of your voice and make sure you use a vocal variety and convey engagement. Pay close attention to your body language. You know, are you leaning in as if that you are paying attention, or are you leaning out, which some communicate as a lack of interest? So pay attention to your body language. And so quite a bit more is I go over in the communication chapter. I'm going to leave you with this on the communication chapter. Jeff Bezos, I call him the master communicator. When Jeff Bezos do not understand an email or why he got an email, have you ever received the email and don't know why you're on the email? His reply, and I have a copy of an actual email from May 23rd, 2013, from Jeff Bezos to Sebastian Gunningham, where his reply was something very simple. What do you think that reply was when he did not understand why he was copied on the email? As simple as it can get. His reply email is a question mark. Yep, that's it. He typed the question mark and hit send. So a lot of executive level leaders are very simplistic and simple when they communicate. And as this example shows, the reason for this question mark email is that he did not understand why he was on this email trail, did not understand why he was receiving the email, and so he simply responded with the question mark. So that's quite interesting. What do you say? All right, moving through the chapters. So we are now on chapter number 4. You need more than a resume. Well, you do need more than a resume, because as a senior leader, you need to show your success, your results. Remember, I talked about what are the results that you generate. So you need a work portfolio. Now, your work portfolio can be the things that you've created for an organization, but be careful, because you do not want to share any intellectual property or any confidential information without your organizational approval. And so you may have to redact and sanitize some of your documents and get permission from your employer to add it into your work portfolio. But a work portfolio, it lists projects that you've worked on, items that you've created, teams that you've led, special teams that you've led. It shows the hierarchical relationship between yourself and individuals within the company that you worked on with those teams. For instance, let's say if you were a manager and you worked on a team with a vice president for a very important project, so you would list the titles of the individuals that were on that team, as well as what the project objectives were and the project results were. So all of those things can be in your work portfolio, and it is a welcome addition to your resume. I think the last thing I want to talk about in this chapter is called professional equity. I teach a lot with my coaching clients on professional equity. It is exactly what you kind of think it is. Like equity for your house is over time, after you've had a house and you've paid on it, then you accumulate a monetary equivalent value within that house over a period of time. Well, professional equity is something that you want to coin and you want to accumulate within the within an organizational structure, within a community structure. If you are an entrepreneur, it is reputation plus expertise plus relationships. That is the formula for professional equity: reputation plus expertise plus relationships. And so I talk about in this chapter the benefits of having the right reputation, being known for the right type of expertise, and the benefits of relationship and the value that it gives you in the business space as well as in the corporate structure. Okay, we're almost kind of wrapping up. So chapter 6 is for those who are interested in seeking employment under someone else, and it talks about those things that you need to do to get ready for the interview. And to get ready for the interview, you need to turn into a researcher, is what you need to turn into, basically. I coach my clients on researching not only the company, but the major players within the company. You want to research who you're replacing, where they went. You want to research the media, any newsworthy information about the company you're joining. And when that newsworthy information will have to do with technology, money, players coming and going. Those are the type of things you need to research, because if there's a mad exodus going on in an organization, I think you would want to know that before you join the organization, and you would want to inquire why so many certain level leaders are leaving from an organization that you are interviewing with. And so you want to research before the interview. And I have a number of different things in that chapter that you can research. So real quickly, as we're kind of winding down, I do want to go over a couple of things that you may have never heard in terms of do's and don'ts for the interview process. I would also say for any major meeting, if you are an entrepreneur, these are do's and don'ts for any major meeting too. Number one, do not eat a heavy meal within 3 hours of your scheduled interview time or major meeting time. There's a reason for that. Don't know how your body works or whatever, but what you don't want to happen is in the midst of your major interview or your meeting, if you're an entrepreneur, that you need to excuse yourself because you have to go take care of yourself in terms of, because you ate a heavy meal 3 hours. So within 3 hours, I coach my clients, do not eat a heavy meal within 3 hours of any major meeting or major interview. You also want to make sure you know what is out there about you. Google yourself. some of you, if you've been around for a while, like I've been around for 30 years, I can Google my name, but you want to know what others see when they research you so that you can answer any possible questions that they may have. So even if you are an entrepreneur doing business for yourself, Google yourself from time to time because other people are Googling you. Is that a word? Googling. Other people are researching you. I've had people send me a friend request right while I'm standing right in front of them, on LinkedIn and other things. So people do research you. Also, you want to clean up any old and current social media accounts when you are having a major business meeting with anyone as an entrepreneur or a major interview. Particularly old accounts, we move from one thing to the next without even thinking about the old accounts that we may have had, like MySpace and all kinds of stuff. Those things are still out there in the ether. And so you want to close them down, shut them down, sanitize them. But if you're not using them, just get rid of them, deactivate them. So make sure that you clean up old and clean up your current social media accounts as well. If you are interviewing or you are doing business, expect to do business with someone because they will check up on you. When you're asked questions, you want to use the STAR method. The STAR method is basically where you are addressing the situation, you're addressing the task, the actions that you use to address that situation, and then the results that the actions generated. It's called the STAR method. So any questions that someone you want to do business with, you can answer their questions using the STAR method as well as in an actual interview as well. So I have a lot of tidbits in that chapter. So we are moving right along. Data-driven leadership. Leadership is more than a spreadsheet. I cannot employ you to use analytics. It's more. I mean, I love analytics, but that's how you determine your value. That's how you get your funding if you work for an organization. That's how you can convince somebody, if you're your own entrepreneur, that you are worth what you're charging by sharing with them your analytics, your customers, your turnaround time, the monies you generated, the partnerships you had, the ROIs, based on those type of relationships and processes that you utilize. You need to know how to talk in numbers. Storytelling is good, but part of that storytelling is using numbers as part of the story to show the return on investment that you generated for the employer or for your business. So make sure that you use data-driven leadership. That is chapter 7 of the book. I go in depth about the different types of data, data aware, data blind, data averse. And so you can get the book to get an in-depth understanding of those. And then image is more than a blazer. Obviously, your reputation is part of your image. How you communicate is part of your image. The results you generate is part of your image. And none of those things are part of a blazer. And so I go a little deep about what really is your image. It's not what you wear at all. You can wear the same dress, suit, jacket. I've seen men alternate between 2 different jackets for a whole week and just change the tie and change the shirt, and it doesn't make them less effective than or less of an image than women who feel like they have to wear a different outfit to the office every day. So no, image has nothing to do with clothing. Image has to do with everything other than clothing. Clothing is only a very small part of it, but you will never not get a job that one thinks you're qualified for and have the knowledge to address that job. You will never not get a job because you wore the same suit for 7 days or the same dress for 7 days. But you will not get a job if you don't have the knowledge, the reputation, and the results, a track record of results that is needed for one to have confidence to know that you can perform the tasks and responsibilities associated with that job. Chapter 9 talks about compensation, negotiations during a salary offer. Not really going to go into that deep, but just know that if you are working in a corporate structure or if someone is coming to work for you, I teach my clients, there are 25 other things other than salary that you can ask an employer for that has a monetary value that you might want to consider. So I don't just think salary. There are things that have an equivalent value to money that you can ask for as part of compensation that will enhance your life just like money will. And so you want to, and I list those in that particular chapter. And then the final chapter, again, is You're Not One of the Boys. And that chapter just really just talks about a little bit of the difference between men and women. Believe it or not, there are a few differences. And it just employ women to be authentic and not feel compelled to act like one of the boys once they get in the C-suite. So that is Pruden Principles, 10 strategies to propel women to the C-suite. And if you are interested in the book, you can find the book on my website, drkarenhillspruden.com. I think I have it's like 5:52, so 5 minutes. So if you have a question that I can answer in the chat for 5 minutes, I'll be glad to do that. Hopefully you found the information helpful. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Helen, for chiming in. Lavon for chiming in, and Reverend Minister LaKesha definitely for chiming in. It is truly my pleasure. I actually love talking about this kind of stuff. So you have made my day. So it looks like there are no questions. I'll hang out here until 6 o'clock, and then I will go check somebody else out.